Hello chess friends, and welcome to Chess Lovers channel. In my hand I'm holding my 12th suggestion of most important book of all chess books. I'm mainly focusing on video game books, so you can increase your fundamental understanding of how chess could and should be played. So Pawn Power in Chess by Hans Kmoch is, in my opinion, outstanding regarding pawn structures, because it's discussing all kinds of pawn structures and with a completely unique terminology. And for some reason, Hans Kmoch's terminology has not been accepted in chess community. And I struggled to find out why. I believe the main reason is that many players have not understood the significance of what Hans Kmoch has written in the beginning of part 1, the elements of pawn play. So he's writing like this: in discussing the details of any given position, it is convenient to refer to them with technical terms of basic significance. Such terms are also useful inasmuch as concepts with names makes a deeper impression in the mind than concepts without names. So the terminology is key for this book, and the same goes for Nilswich's book, My System, as well. I'm totally convinced that words are more important than variations. Words must always come first. And this book is a typical example of this, Pawn Power in Chess. I have worked very, very hard with this book. As you can see, it's even broken. So, what does the book contain? Hans Kmoch has split it in 3 parts, beginning with part 1, the elements of pawn play. And the first chapter is the elements in review and pawns single file. And then part 2, pawns and pieces. So chapter 3, pawns and bishops, pawns and knights, pawns and rooks. And then the sealer and the sweeper, the pawns and the fork trick. Part 3 then, perhaps the most important in the whole book, pawn power in the game. And this chapter made a very strong impression on me, Benoni formations. And the last chapter is about a variety of formations. So we can hear from these 3 parts that he's dealing with everything connected to pawns. And I give you a few examples of his terminology. For example, he's talking about the ram. Here's an example of this, the ram. And in a chess games, many rams will appear, but I don't know a single book who's treating rams in detail, except when they are located in the center. So chess is very much a matter of understanding when the ram is strong and when it's not strong, because chess is ultimately about liquidating the ram if you want to win the game. Sooner or later you must open the position. You must open lines, you must open diagonals, you must get squares to be able to win the game. Another example of his terminology is here when he's talking about stops and telestops. And with a stop he means the square in front of a pawn. It could be a pass pawn. While Kmoch call this square a blockade square, Kmoch call it stop. And the other squares in front of the pawn, but not directly in front of it, Kmoch calls reserve blockade squares. Then Kmoch calls them telestops. Okay, it's a matter of opinion what you want to use. I must admit that I have used Kmoch terminology. But anyway, you need words. If you say blockade or if you say stops, it does not really matter as long as the terminology has been your own terminology. So that is the key, that you should embrace both Kmoch and in this case Kmoch terminology, and then you use the terminology in your own games, because then you get an advantage, because you make it a concept with a name. Because if you play concepts without names, the risk increases that you are not playing according to a concept. So we must learn all these names of different strategy, in this case how to handle different varieties in the pawn formation, not only dealing with the center. We're talking about all pawns on the whole board, and he has elaborated a whole terminology. So this is a clear classic, which in my opinion has been highly ignored. This was actually the book I was recommended. At the same time I was recommended my system when I was in my teenage, around 15, maybe 16 years old. Unfortunately, I didn't understand how good this book was, because the terminology was too difficult for me. I was too young to understand it. I didn't have a coach who could tell me that you must learn the terminology, because learning the terminology is the same as learning concepts. And for every concept you learn, you get an edge. If you play an opponent who is not even aware it is a concept and that it has a name. I studied this book for the first time very deeply in 1987 to 1988. I was around 24 years old, and I worked very hard with this book, so it's even broken. And I underlined what I believe was the most important in this book. For example, a game between Kmoch, Alexander Alekhine from 1937 in Holland. It was a Benoni formation, and Alekhine managed to win that game with the black pieces. I promise to show you that game, but not in this clip. So, the 12th best chess book, don't ignore it. It's the only one of its kind. Thank you for watching.